there's new numismatic discoveries taking place quite frequently. They'll find a new penny of Offer of Mercia, let's say, which is a new reverse design. And so all the academic texts have to be updated. It's not... in the US, you will see every single die pairing for US dollars, for every denomination of the early type.
Has always been recorded.
It's been recorded. Exactly.
Yeah, but the different variations in the old British coins...
They're too
weren't
vast.
recorded, and...
So there's a lot of untapped knowledge, potential new discoveries that are still being made.
Hello and welcome to Collectibles House Podcast. My name's Richard, your host today, and I'm joined here with Liam. How are we doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you, my friend. How are you? You okay?
Very well, running off the highs of, the all-time high of gold.
We have, a busy week in the world of collectibles, gold coins specifically. We've had a busy week with a couple of events, whiskey-wise, art-wise. We've had a few pieces going all over the place. I think the furthest was Denmark. We've had a few bits going out too, but like you say, the week's been driven pretty much by the gold price, which is pretty good. I know it's kept you pretty much in front of the laptop and on the phone all week long. So if you want to give the listeners a little bit of a background as to what you've been up to this week.
Yeah, of course. It's been a crazy week, hitting new all-time highs. I think 5 days on the banks, we hit a new all-time high, and that goes on from realistically the last couple of months. We've just been rallying super quick, and as much as we've bought back crazy amounts because everyone's taking advantage of it makes sense. We're also selling, really big amounts of gold. People are still getting involved, still jumping on the high. I know there's some big predictions for 2025, so I think we're still early in the price, and I think it's almost never too late to get involved in gold, right?
Yep. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've had that real mix of sort of first-time investors getting involved for seeing the jumps, right up to, as you say, buying back a few pieces to sort of avid collectors and investors trying to get last few bits for collections. Obviously, we're joined today by an absolutely fantastic guest in the coin world and in the coin market. One of the most experienced folks that we've got around. We've got his book here today. It's Robbie Parkinson, the author of Ecoinomics. Robbie, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here.
Lovely. Thank you. Appreciate that. And maybe you can just give the listeners maybe a little bit of background about you and sort of what you do and who you are.
Certainly. So I'm Robert Parkinson, or Robbie, as I am mostly informally everywhere else. I work at eBay UK as the senior category manager for coins, bullion, and stamps. And I've formerly been a coin specialist at Spink & Son, quite a traditional auction house here in London, Heritage Auctions in the States, and Sovereign Rarities before joining eBay about 2 years ago. So I also am an avid collector of British coins, and I am frequently in trouble with my partner for overbuying on eBay and at major auctions.
It's great. It's really becoming a real recurring theme of the guests we've got on this podcast when it comes to collectibles about the feud between partners. It seems there's one side of every relationship that has that collector's mind and the money that can be made and the opportunities and the chance to have cool stuff, and then there's normally a very unhappy partner who keeps checking the joint account and has some few choice words,
trying to hide how much a coin actually was, or a stamp.
I tell her the money is still there, and she says, "Are you going to sell it?" I say no, and she says, "Well, it's not still there, is it? Then you've just bought yourself a present." But no, I think that there are far worse ways one can spend their money. I could also be spending it a lot on food and drink, which of course I also do.
True.
So yeah, I'm going to nearly be on the market, ladies.
I think that it actually brings us to the first point. I mean, I've been through the book. It's a fantastic read. It's so informative. It's great for anyone that's looking to get into the market. Anyone that's even well versed in the market is fantastic. Couple of issues that I did have pretty much from the first few pages. I know just like you've mentioned there, you said obviously the coin hobby is a fantastic hobby to get, and worst comes to worst, you've still got the value of the coins and the pieces down the line. And I believe you actually throw a bit of shade towards the golfing world. And in particular, all you're going to get with golf is a couple of bad knees. So I do limp, but that's nothing to do with the golf.
Yeah, I can only apologize. That's coming from a man who chose coins over sports at a very early age and just never got to terms with that. I can't do any sports properly. So, I think that you'll see me put on a lot of weight over the next few decades.
I appreciate the honesty there. It's good to hear. So for the guys listening, maybe it's just if you could just maybe give us a quick intro of sort of what you're actually doing at eBay, your current affairs. You've mentioned you've been at pretty much the biggest houses and the biggest auction sites, and eBay obviously behemoth around the world. What's your sort of current role there?
So it's very different to some of my previous positions. I would say that the auction houses I've worked at have all had their own challenges and their own positives for sure. And I think them straddling a couple of different countries has really helped get a kind of global idea of the market. Now, working for eBay is it's more of an overseeing role. It's quite nice to be out of the competition of the auction houses, as there's obviously a lot of vying for particular collections. At eBay, I'm working with some of the biggest sellers on the platform who deal with coins, just to try and present their inventory, put on little events for them to showcase some of their better lines when there's new coins out. I'd like to say, well, look, this is here now. I don't know if you guys heard, but in the last few weeks, there was a lot of hubbub about the 2023 salmon 50p without a privy mark, which, the Royal Mint published the figures and they said there's only 200,000, fewer than the Kew Gardens 2009.
Rarish 50p, right? Yeah.
So I've been trying to be reactive with that, putting events on for that on the Coins Hub, just so people who are there looking for that particular coin can immediately be signposted that way. And then it's just also making sure that we as eBay stay present in the market. We are showing collectors that we're interested, we're engaged. So this week I've been at Stampex, the big stamp show that takes place once a year. And last month was CoinEx. So again, eBay was there presenting, just making sure that we're taking feedback from dealers and sellers and private collectors alike, and make sure that we are doing what we can to make eBay a favorable place for transacting in this market we all love.
Yeah, I think you've it was great, obviously, the work you're doing there, and I think you can probably take a fair bit of credit for a particular. I think there's a lot of sellers out there that have got you to thank, I believe. If you want to give the take your moment to shine in all your glory.
Yeah, you're welcome, everyone. No. So as of September 1st, business sellers on eBay UK will pay the standard 10.9% up to £450 of a coin sale, and any portion over that, the final value fee drops to 3%, plus the usual fixed listing fees if they apply. And that means that if you sell, let's say, a coin for £1,000, rather than paying 10.9%, you're paying an average overall of about, I think, 6.55%. And that obviously goes down the more valuable the coin you sell. So if someone's selling a coin for 5,000, 10,000, the rate drops to much closer to 3% overall, which is really, really useful for those higher value coins that essentially you can walk into any auction house and sell. It just means that it's a lot more agreeable to have that little percentage versus something more in the kind of 10% and above range.
Yeah, so I think it could be huge for eBay. I think we'll see a lot of those higher end coins, because I think traditionally we've seen a lot of the lower end pieces on there because of those fees. So hopefully that will,
that's what I hope to
unlock that.
I think sometimes, and I think one of the real advantages eBay offers is the ability to be quick and react to market conditions swiftly. And I think particularly for modern coins, I think sometimes you see prices grow exponentially for certain coins, and then sometimes the prices might stabilize and maybe come off a bit. And I think if you try and go through a traditional auction house, when I was at Heritage and Sovereign Rarities particularly, we saw a lot of people trying to get on this, and they place a coin at auction, but by the time the auction takes place, maybe months later, the prices drop considerably, and they're already contractually obliged to sell that coin. Mm-hmm. Whereas on eBay, you can sell something at a relatively high value, and you can sell it quickly, maybe in a week or 2 weeks, especially if you put it on for auction, and then you can liquidate and move on much more quickly. And I think this fee reduction does really help sellers who are in that sort of bind where they need to sell quickly. It means they're not being charged some comparatively, I suppose, just some higher premium just for trying to sell quickly. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. So it's fantastic, and say that's pretty much going to touch every single seller coin-wise. The coin industry, that's pretty huge news across the globe, really, in terms of pieces being sold and opened up. So maybe you could give us an idea from, instead of being the sort of the world-shaping eBay man that you are now, how did you sort of get into the industry, or where did it start for you growing up?
Well, as I say, I was not a sporty kid. I was collecting all sorts of random things. So I was interested in science, nature, insects, all sorts. And then I moved on to things like fossils, and then more kind of archaeological things. So
what sort of age would you say? Is this sort of you young growing up, or?
I was about eight at this point.
Really young. Then.
So it was, I think from about four I was interested in antiques and science and nature generally. So by about 8, I was more interested in fossils. And then I moved on to things that were archaeological, human sense. And by about age 10, I think that's when the tsunami hit Indonesia. And I started this little fossil stall outside my house to raise money for the tsunami appeal. So I was 10 at that point.
Oh, amazing.
And apparently my dad tells me I was just fleecing all the neighbors. I was
taking fees at that point.
I was, not at that point, no. But I think my mum said that if I got above £80, she'd buy me a takeaway. So I had a real incentive there.
Cool.
And that was when my problems with food started. But I from there, I really, actually, you know what? I did sell some coins at that store. I had a little box of coins, Victorian pennies, things like that I'd gathered over the last, 2 years of my life. And I had it all in this box, and I was expecting to charge about 50 pence a coin. And this coin dealer came along, and he picked up the whole box and said, I'll give you a £5 for all this. And I sort of stumbled and said, okay, I suppose. And he said, great. And he took it. The box wasn't even for sale. And that's when I realized to make way in business, you've got to really, what's the word I'm looking for? Scam little children. And that's how you get.
That's how Richard got going. Funny you should mention that. That's exactly how Richard got going as well. Yeah. He's 2 young boys and then got a pot to piss in, my friend.
No,
yeah. He's charging rent already. It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I'm following a great man, clearly. Actually, I don't know which one of us is older, but no, I from there, I was fine with that really. But I then started rebuilding my coin collection. I think over the next few years, I'd always ask the same questions when I was confronted with any collectible or any house or building of any great age, which was, how old is it? What's it worth? Mm-hmm. And just, I wanted to know who was on the throne at that time. And then when I was about, I had a few coins knocking about, but when I was 14, or 15, I went to Camden Market, as is the age to do that. And I went to an antique stall there, and I found someone selling trades and trades of old coins. And I just went through, I picked about £5 worth. And amongst these coins, which are from various different countries, was this one 18th century halfpenny of George III, dated 1799. So this isn't a rare or valuable coin. These things were made in their millions, and this one was a particularly bad condition example. Later, I actually got this coin graded by NGC, and it came back as a lofty 2 out of 70. But I wanted it on my desk as a reminder of where I came from. But anyway, the fact that this coin was dated 1799, it blew my mind. Something that was so clearly pre-1800s, pre-Victoria. I hadn't seen a coin of that age. So I was kind of hooked at that point.
Yeah.
I remember going online and looking up the values of these coins and completely overinflating the grade that I had of these things. I thought, okay, I can see one here that's about extremely fine that went for 150. So I guess mine's worth the same. Yeah. Because at the time I thought that if all examples of a certain coin type were worth the same. I just didn't see the point of worrying about the condition. But anyway, long story long in this situation. I collected for a few years. I then sold a lot of my collection a year later or 2 years later, started collecting again at university and buying and selling. So I went to UCL and I studied forensic science and archaeology. And so by my 3rd year, I was really interested in that. And coins were taking a bit of a back foot compared to all that. And I started working on a forensic experiment that I was invited to present at a conference in New Zealand. Unfortunately, I was having to save up to attend this conference because it's not cheap to go out there. So I spent the whole summer buying and selling coins, artifacts, anything I could find at car boot sales, buying and selling on eBay. And I made enough money to get out there, go to the conference, experiment was well received. And then I came back a few months later and I was really struggling to find a job in that field. So in want of something else to do, I thought, well, I've been buying and selling for a few months. Why don't I try something in the coin industry? So I got in touch with Spink and I joined as an intern there in March of 2017, I think it was. So from there, I was there at Spink for a year and then was approached by Heritage, who said, we're looking for someone to come out to Dallas and spend a few months here.
Sorry, just jumping there for people that might not be quite aware, could you just tell them that know what Spink and Heritage are? Obviously we know, but for those that don't.
Of course. So Spink is one of the oldest auction houses in the UK and in the world, founded in 1666. And they are quite academic. And so when I joined, they were very much not so into grading, very much into the provenance of coins, big extensive library. And they publish Coins of England, and they have done for the last sort of 30 years. Mm-hmm. So it's a book, comes out every year with a price guide. And it was something I had as from an early age. So it felt like I'd made it.
We've got a copy right down here. Yep, we've got a copy right here. It's literally just behind you, Rich.
There it is, Coins of England. So I would pour through this thing, fantasizing that I owned the coins in the pictures. That is now going to be published by Sovereign Rarities as of next year.
Yep.
So I was at Spink for a year and I really enjoyed the traditional approach. I really did enjoy the perception of prestige, but I think it was at the time a little bit more backward, a bit antiquated. Meanwhile, I was approached by Heritage Auctions in Dallas, who are a much more modern kind of grading focused numismatic and indeed collectibles auctioneer. And they were interested in hiring me, but for an initial 6-month stint in Dallas, Texas, and then coming back and working between the UK and US offices of Heritage. And I was really interested in their approach. The juxtaposition between that and the more what I considered to be old-fashioned approach of Spink was really a draw for me. So I moved out to Dallas in 2018, and I spent the next 6 months there learning the ways of Heritage and cataloging some of their auctions with some excellent coins. I saw some really fantastic pieces. Mm-hmm. So I would stay at Heritage for 2 years in total, and then we were getting into the midst of the pandemic at that point, and travel was getting more and more difficult, and the future of the London office was not certain. Mm-hmm. So I took another role at Sovereign Rarities, London-based auction house and dealer.
Yep.
And so I joined there in 2020, and I spent 2.5 years there as their head of auctions, running through and managing their numismatic auctions, trying to get stuff in,
yep,
cataloging, etc.
One of obviously the biggest auction houses that you're going to come across. You're going to find. Yes, it's pretty impressive. Obviously, it's cool to hear that. Sounds like your, I guess, journey in collectibles started from, like a few people we've had, really young experiences, often, I guess, sculpted by parents' help in the way of, your mum chucking the idea of a takeaway down for making a little bit of money doing the right thing, which is great. I mean,
thanks, Mum.
Yeah, plenty of guests on that have, again, same sort of thing. I mean, our last guest, same thing. It's a massive comic book auction house. He remembered very vividly from being a young lad and being taken to the library and reading really early experience comics. Obviously, you've got the same sort of thing with coins. So it's good to see how that sort of develops from young ages. Obviously now in terms of coin wise, you'd say for people, I guess, or young kids getting involved in the industry now, you've mentioned there, it's a bit antiquated, the actual experience itself. How would you say for new people getting involved is the way to go about it?
I don't think there's anything wrong with an antiquated approach to getting into coins. I think that whatever captures your interest early on is the right path to take. I think that if you're looking to participate on an investment type level, or if you're looking to collect and make sure that you're buying at the best price possible, that's when you need to be more aware of the market trends and the way it's going, in order to make sure that you're paying an appropriate price in what is becoming an increasingly more commoditized market. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with an antiquated, academic approach. I mean, that's how I got into it. It was thinking about the history. I remember taking the few coins I had at that age to Hampton Court and just thinking, I'm at a place of history with pieces of history, just feeling that scale and that kind of fascination. I think that it's whatever captures your interest. So for me, when I talk to kids who might be interested in coins at various fairs, etc., one thing I encourage is to try buying a Roman coin, because you can get a bronze Roman coin for a few pounds. They made so many of them. And even though the demand is quite strong, the supply is so great that prices are kept low. And that means you can quite easily afford a coin that will make everyone else go, wow, that's amazing. That's 2,000 years old. And will have that sort of that appeal that a rare coin has, being able to transverse across people, not even in just exclusively in the hobby, but to people outside.
The whole story behind it, younger people, older people can relate with the whole story of the Roman Empire and a bit more excitement beyond just obviously the coin and the piece that you've got, which is obviously really cool.
They can build a nice collection. And at the end of the day, I think it's that old antique sort of style we're talking about that drives the market for the numismatic investment side. These top coins are only worth, even the modern ones are only worth what they're worth because essentially there's an end buyer, which is a collector, right?
I completely agree. I think that there is a tendency for some dealers and some investment-minded buyers, sellers, what have you. There's a tendency to lose touch with the real passion that collectors use to drive the market. And I think that's what can create issues, is that investors and pure investors entering the market, they only help prop up and build momentum and market stability. They don't do any damage in the right quantity. But in the 1980s, I think leading up to 1989, there was a crash in the US coin market. And that was caused by the invention of grading. And coins were the first graded collectibles. In the mid-80s, I think it was PCGS and then NGC who started, and now they expanded outwards into Collectors Universe and CGC. But coins started being graded, and what that did is that broke down the knowledge barrier needed for new buyers to understand what a coin's condition was, whether it's authentic, and any details about the mint mark, etc. It was primarily for US coins. But this ease of access to the coin market interested a lot of investment firms, interested Wall Street. I think Merrill Lynch had a fund specifically for graded antique US coins. And this encouraged so much speculation between investors and buying back that the actual academic passion-driven collectors didn't want to participate anymore. Prices were too high. They felt it was just completely inflated. They stopped participating, and that meant there was no end consumer to buy these coins that had been traded so many times with a premium added every single transaction. So I think having that interest is essential to fuel the market, because we deal in an alternative asset, sure, but it's something that really has its backbone in fascination and these kind of interests instilled early on at childhood.
Yeah, I think even with the modern coins, we've seen very similar things happen with people coming in to flip the coins, brand new modern coins that come out from the raw mint. But if the collectors feel sometimes, like you say, disheartened or lose interest because the cost of them have gone up so much, or they can't get them from the raw mint at the initial price, they're having to pay a big premium because an investor's come in and bought them all up and then are reselling them. They lose interest. And then we do see a collapse almost in that coin series. So I still think we see that a little bit. And that's why I think the collector is so important in any industry, whether it's cards, comics, but particularly obviously we're talking coins here, but
I think so too. I think for the modern coins, there are particular lines, particular issues that end up being far more popular than others. Some things like, the 1994 Bank of England £2 they made in gold. They made a few of them with an incorrect obverse die, the mule
one.
Yeah. And they're so popular. They're really popular. And it's something that people would be buying these things. I'm sure other people would have said they were expensive at the time, but they have gone up in price to be multiples of a non-era type. And I think it's the sad or the difficult reality of it is that sometimes you won't know how good an investment something turns out to be until you find out what the market draw of it is, the demand. And that's something that, a bit like the salmon 50p, right? People were trading those for £3, £4 on eBay last year. And since that was
something comes out and gets released, suddenly it's the most popular thing.
Yeah, £150 odd.
Just market trends.
10-fold, 20-fold, 100-fold even in this case. It's gone up huge amounts. And now I'm sure it only lasts a little while and then it'll settle, but I'm sure it's going to be worth more than £3 pretty much forever now, right?
Exactly.
Or at least for
And you can't anticipate the specific movement from this point onwards, whether it will drop a bit, increase a bit, but you can say that anyone who was in the ground floor is going to do absolutely fine out of it.
Yeah,
and talking about the grading as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, a coin like that, not all of them would have got sent off for grading. Very few. Most of them were in circulation, handled. So now people are realizing. So to get that top grade in that particular coin now is going to be nigh on impossible. Like there will be a few, I'm sure, but I guess that's when you start distinguishing the ones that maybe will continue to grow in value over the long term.
Yeah, you see that in numismatic history going back a few hundred years, that there are sometimes incredibly rare types that are only represented by quite low grade examples because no one thought to put them aside.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the trends you see going back a few hundred years is what are the chances of this collectible item being put aside en masse, or was it just used as an everyday item?
Yeah. Is it a very rare item? Is it a very rare example, or has this been basically earmarked as a rare piece?
Well, exactly. Like an example I remember is the 1839 sovereign of Victoria. So 1838, first sovereigns of Victoria are made, and they're quite rare and they're very popular and they're worth a huge premium over the gold versus other Victorian sovereigns. But what's even rarer at the 1839 issue, because that was the year of Victoria's coronation proof set. So all the collectors of coins at the time, they put aside the sovereign from the proof set. No one bothered putting aside the 1839 currency sovereign.
Yeah.
So now collectors of only currency sovereigns struggle to get a high grade example because no one saved one as their collection.
Yeah. Well, that actually brings a really nice question. I'm going to quote you from your book. We are going to get something on the record, just in regards to third party grading. You basically say people can fall on two sides of the coin. Excuse the pun there. To basically third party grading is absolutely imperative for the integrity of the business. Or B, merely a means of transforming historical artifacts into soulless commodities. Where do you sort of fall on the third party grading when it comes to coins?
Yeah,
and there's no sitting on the fence here, I'm afraid.
It's difficult being quoted back.
Told you I'd read it.
I'm impressed.
That's on page 1.
So I grade all my coins.
Okay.
And I'm buying mostly as a collector.
Okay.
Now, I also buy pretty much only those coins that I think would benefit from grading and that would grade well.
So you buy raw and grade?
Yes, almost exclusively.
Okay.
That's partially because the way I buy is to try and purchase under what I consider to be the market price. That's only determined when the coin's graded. And we're in this slight turbulent time here in the UK and the European market where grading is permeating, but it's not there yet. It's not the standard like it is in the US.
Yeah.
And there's a few reasons for that. One of them being that our numismatic history is so long. And I noticed this, and I cover it in the book, but I noticed this as a difference between European and sort of colonial satellite markets. Things like the US, Australia, Canada, South Africa, countries with relatively high GDP for the most part, but quite short numismatic histories because they were typically established as colonies by other wealthy countries. And what you end up with there is a short numismatic series with a lot of people interested in their history, wanting to buy them. And it's not so hard to get a near complete run. So what you do is you introduce grading to help differentiate between examples of the same type.
Yeah.
You know, okay, yeah, you've got everything, but I've got them in a higher grade.
I've got the better ones, yeah. Whereas British coins, there are thousands of examples that you can't simply get the entire series and runs. Or very unlikely, unless you're Elon Musk suddenly turns his hand to collecting coins, to be able to have the capital behind you to do it.
Exactly. And there's new numismatic discoveries taking place quite frequently. They'll find a new penny of Offer of Mercia, let's say, which is a new reverse design. And so all the academic texts have to be updated. It's not in the US, you will see every single die pairing for US dollars for every denomination of the early type
has always been recorded.
It's been recorded. Exactly.
Yeah, but the different variations in the old British coins,
they're too
vast.
Recorded,
and
so there's a lot of untapped knowledge, potential, new discoveries that are still being made in US coins, and that's what in UK coins and European coins generally, which is one of the reasons I think metal detectorists at the moment have quite an exciting journey on their hands because they could feasibly find a completely new type. But for me, for the later British coins, you typically find a much higher percentage are graded. For one, you don't have to worry about a big discovery of new coins entering the market so much, because you have mintage figures for the most part, or you have a rough idea how many examples there are in trade.
And for the listeners, when you say later years, what would that be?
I would probably put later years at sort of the 18th century onwards. You do find, I mean, there are hordes of Civil War coins and even things like early guineas found quite often. Oh, well, not quite often, but they are still known.
Yeah.
A few years ago, the Ellaby area hoard was found, a big hoard of about just under 300 gold guineas and half guineas and a couple of hammered coins. I think dating to about 1724, 1725. So that's quite a late period to have such an assemblage of coins coming to light.
Yep.
Whereas for earlier coins like Saxon pennies, English hammered pennies in general, these sorts of these earlier, maybe pre-Tudor coins, they do turn up.
Yeah.
And it's harder to get an angle on how many examples there are, what the potential supply is, and what that will do to demand down the line.
Yeah. I think for us, I mean, we look at obviously people investing in gold coins and the grading side of things. And I think the biggest thing it's done for us is maybe helping people get involved in the market without needing 15, 20 years worth of collecting coins. It's given that baseline, that standardized way of being able to say, well, okay, this is the level of rarity. This is some average prices. This is a correlation of what I'm looking at, rather than trying to say to somebody, this dirty old 400-year coin is worth £100,000 compared to your Roman coin that you would instantly think is worth 10 times more. It's worth a few pounds. It's given that sort of baseline figure. So yeah, we're probably on the pro grading side as well, just for, I guess, peace of mind when it comes to people getting involved in the market.
I think I'm very much of the same opinion. I think that it aids market transparency.
Yeah.
And I think the 1989 coin market crash, that tanked prices for a few years until the internet allowed for much more real-time analysis and examination of comparative prices paid for different coins or coins of the same type. And that really helped increase trust and transparency, knowing, okay, well, I know this is a fair enough price because this sold for this. I think grading as well, it gives an equivalency between coins of the same type, and it increases the number of data points that we can refer to when we're trying to price a coin, we're trying to work out what to buy. You can say, well, look, I mean, pieces of art, right? They're far more unique typically, and one could be off the market for decades. And you have a 30-year data point that you can't really say what's that worth now.
Completely subjective. It's who wants to pay what for it.
Exactly. But if you're buying a coin and you think, okay, well, this actually hasn't been sold for 50 years, but it's an MS63 and another MS63 of the same type sold earlier this year for $4,500. You think, well, that gives me a pretty good benchmark for what I should pay for this. And if I get it for $2,000, it's cheap. If I pay $6,000, it might be too expensive. It's not science necessarily at that stage, if it's something with that few data points, but it gives you a much better indication, much more confidence, and it allows collectors, dealers who maybe wouldn't have gone for that same coin to participate, knowing with confidence that they may be getting it for a decent price.
Yeah, fantastic. I know Richard's he's basically our data side of a few of the coins graded and whatnot, and say we see some big differences, don't we, in sort of the rare pieces that come through. We don't deal quite as much in the sort of older historic pieces. We have a lot more of the modern stuff where we sort of bring in the market to retail investors getting involved. So it is obviously that little always benchmark for people with grading side of things and coming through. But I think once we get people involved, don't we get a lot of people come back to us suddenly, well, I've now been checking the prices here, I've seen this, and coming back to us, which is always cool to see pure investors suddenly getting that little bug in comparison to just, buying a slab of a gold bar and getting involved.
Well, exactly. It's you get to enjoy the art and the artistic appeal, and especially, I mean, I see you've got a few great Engraver series coins here and British Monarchs, etc. The Royal Mint celebrating these earlier designs, these earlier paragons of engraving skill, particularly with the Three Graces and the Gothic Crown, and of course the Una, which started a lot of this off. And I think just in enjoying that, maybe you just start that itch where you say, well, maybe I could get an original one of these one day. Maybe I can, this one looks nice. What would look nice next to this? And suddenly through bullion, through buying and selling precious metals, you've got a coin collector out of that.
I think that's one of the journeys we see probably most often. People are coming in, I want to buy gold. Everyone refers to a bar naturally. Obviously there's lots of perks to buying a coin with capital gains tax and etc. But a lot of the modern stuff is produced en masse. It hasn't got that historic story behind it. They might be like the Great Engraver series, which has done incredibly well. But celebrating some of those old pieces, we do tend to find when a customer comes aboard and then joins that journey, realizes they can still have it from almost an investment standpoint, but get into the older coins. And if anything, they're a bit more stable. They're certainly a lot rarer, whereas a lot of these modern coins, they still do produce in the thousands and never necessarily are going to become ultra rare, because it's so common to grade that new coin now. So many of them, they might have only produced a few hundred of a particular proof piece, but nearly all of them are graded, right? Whereas some of the old coins, we was talking earlier about the Una and the Lion.
Yeah.
Crazy high prices now. And I think the world's highest 66s are over £1 million auction last a couple of years ago. But those prices seem to be consistently moving up and have a pretty good track record.
I think the Una and the Lion is a really iconic coin. There are quite a lot of them, but grading really helps differentiate. I think I'm not sure how many are graded off the top of my head. I think it's over 100. But as you say, there are some of the Great Engraver series that came out recently that also were made. They're made in a number that means that a similar amount exists on the grading census, but they're all 69s and 70s.
All high grades, yeah.
There's not enough of a differentiator. And with the Una and the Lion, as you say, a 62 might be, 350,000 at the moment. But a 66, the 66 star that sold a couple of years ago, yeah, that was well over $1 million. And it's such a huge difference for two mint state coins. But that's, the market craves perfection in that way. And it's something that it took me a while to understand what the real difference was. And I say to anyone who doesn't see any real difference between the 62 and the 66, buy the 62 then, because you're going to be happier for a much lower price.
Yeah.
But inevitably, a lot of us end up becoming perfectionists. Yeah. We go through, we look at so many coins, so many options that we think, I really want that coin that makes everyone else drop their jaws and say, wow, you will not see that in another.
It is almost a bit of a status thing. Saying,
ego kicks in with anything, right? You can't help it. Human nature kicks in.
Someone's got to have the one higher in the world. There's 166 known in the world.
Always happens.
The 1817 we just sold, the 64. There's one in existence of a 65 known. And 1817 sovereign. There's only one 65 known in the world, but there's two 64s. So the chap who bought the 64 now wants the 65, and just because they want the next higher. But you're putting another £10,000 on it. It's a lot of money to add to for one grade. And as you said, the difference is maybe minimal. But that's where the ego kicks in. I want that. And then you own the sole highest grade in that coin.
Well, there's a coin
for over 100 years old.
There's a coin I have here, which I
can please let's show some of the pieces you've got.
So I brought 6 coins here, brought to kind of illustrate a history of the UK. That's kind of how I collect, is to try and build as comprehensive history of the UK as I can through coins. As I have gone forward with this goal, I've realized that's quite an ask. And I've started to prioritize quality over quantity, because anything could fit into that definition. But the one coin I wanted to isolate as a bragging rights coin was this, which is a Thrymsa of, it was an Anglo-Saxon Thrymsa. There's no actual specific monarch it's wedded to. That's from about 650 AD. It's one of the first English gold coins, because gold was not heavily found in the UK. It was found in Wales. There's Welsh gold, obviously.
It's incredible condition.
That is one of the only ones graded. It's also by far the highest of that type. And I found that in a coin market in Munich. And it's not the sort of thing I typically collect. And it's probably worth maybe 15 to 20,000. And it's something that I got for a lot less than that.
And you bought this raw, sorry.
I bought that raw.
Yep. You had it graded. What do you mind telling the people what you potentially bought it for?
It was $5,000.
$5,000? Okay.
So
you've quadrupled the money.
But have I sold it? No, because it's so unusual. It's so hard to get one like that in that condition. Like, that type is one of the more common Thrymsas. But in that condition, with that central strike, with everything, it's I don't think I would see another one like it. And so it stays in the collection.
And it's just an interesting point. Obviously, you note here that you've got this one, and obviously your coins all NGC. Do you have any? Are you a personal preference? Do you see a difference with PCGS or NGC?
I haven't seen any difference personally. NGC are more easy to access from the UK. When I go to US shows, I tend to try and submit with PCGS as well, because I think that there are comparative strengths for both. For me, because NGC have been here since about 2018, I've graded a few things with them. But I think where they're better access to PCGS, I would be grading with them too.
Okay. And of course, for any listeners and yourself, you can grade directly through PCGS or NGC through ourselves here at Bullion House. Bring the coins in, you can submit them. Yep. So we can assist with that, because it's not easy to get for most people wanting to get into grading. It's first of all, it's not always an easy process, but also the shipping, insurance, going over to the States, of course, is a big hurdle for a lot of people.
I've detected a lot of not insecurity as such, but I've seen that nervousness, even with just submitting to NGC. It's people not wanting their coins to cross the ocean. And I mean, I've submitted countless coins from the UK to the US, and every time it's been absolutely fine, no issue, because it's what they do.
Yeah.
But it's great to know that you can submit with PCGS here, because I'll likely be taking advantage of that too. I think for me, there's actually less competition in grading for coins than there is in other collectible areas like cards, for example. I feel like there's multiple different graders you could use for cards, whereas for coins, the real industry standard is PCGS and NGC. CAC also started a grading company last year. They've been, you familiar with them?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, they've adjudicated the grades issued by NGC and PCGS for years, but they've started encapsulating their own coins now.
So this particular coin here, if you don't mind me asking, is this one of the top grades worldwide? Have you got the highest, or?
That's the highest of the type. Now, I don't remember off the top of my head how many examples are graded, because they're rare, and because when you look at the auction history of that type of coin, they're typically excavated. Again, that's a coin that goes back too far to have ever been really collected. Most examples known, they're found dug up.
Yeah.
So there's typically, in that instance, corrosion, there's scratches, there's some damage from being underground for so long. Yeah. So that's the best condition of the type. Yeah. But it could be the only one graded, which would also make it the lowest graded.
Which I guess probably leads me on to my next question. You bought this raw, ungraded in Germany, you said.
Yes.
How does someone realistically make their credit card okay with whipping out a £5,000 coin by looking at that? That's quite innocuous in a market, and be comfortable to buy that without the guarantees that it is what it is or the damage that it is.
I think that you can start to differentiate between fake and authentic coins relatively early on in your collecting journey. Not without exception, certainly. But I think that's something that's a knowledge barrier you cross first. Then going forward, you start to become better at working out what will grade well as well. So for me, what really helped was my time at Heritage. When I was at Spink back in 2017, there wasn't so many graded coins on offer, whereas at Heritage, we did have far more graded coins. And you see one auction in 2018, I had, I think, 1871 sovereigns graded 65. And I tell you what, it was difficult writing something different about each one of them. But also, you start to become very familiar with what a 65 looks like, what a 64 looks like, et cetera, et cetera. There is sometimes some gray area. I would say that, interestingly, I see grades jump from a 58 to a 62. When you get to a 61 or a 60, typically that means there's something about it, maybe a few more bag marks you'd expect to see, something that's demoted it a little bit. I sometimes fall foul of that, where I think there's just a little enough wear on this to get an MS, and then it gets in a 58.
So I guess probably just on that note, obviously you've got a hell of a lot of experience of picking that up, and a lot of people maybe getting into the market. That's where probably graded coins is going to be a slightly better point for them, because they're not going to be able to pick up the sort of expertise and see those coins and get that experience that you probably have. I
would say so. And I think just buying some, even some inexpensive graded coins, will give you some in-hand reference points for what to look for. I mean, obviously it's different depending on the strike of different coins. I would say that it can be quite challenging if a coin's softly struck and it's technically mint state, but it doesn't look like it. You'll see that a lot in some of the Charles I shillings. They can be made without a portrait, but they're technically mint state because they made them so en masse and not very carefully. So that's something which I think takes a lot longer to really get your head around. But Yeah, I would say buy a few inexpensive coins in holders, maybe ranging from XF through to AU through to mint state, just to better differentiate when you get some raw coins, what it's closest to, what could be mint state, what could be AU, etc.
No, it's fantastic tip. And sorry to take away from your next piece.
No, not at all. I'll take that one back because I don't trust you.
That's the one you thought you gave me.
Yeah. Wow, it's so convincing. I thought I would just take you guys through a really quick history of the UK through these coins.
Please.
I kind of try to boil down some of my collection into these. So start with this one here, which is from modern-day Northamptonshire. This is a Celtic gold stater of the Coriel tribe.
So please give us a little background on this one. We'll be starting here.
So coins themselves were first mass-produced in Lydia, which is modern-day Turkey, in about 650 BC.
Mm-hmm.
They very quickly revolutionized the economy of the country. Herodotus, who was a Greek historian at the time, or roughly contemporary, he went there and he said, "Oh, they're a nation of kapaloi, which means merchants. They're all, they had quite an efficient economy out of this because it removed a lot of that bartering aspect from trade, especially when Croesus, if you've ever heard of Richus Croesus, he introduced the first bimetallic coin by separating the naturally occurring electrum in the area into gold and silver." And that meant that suddenly everyone was able to say, okay, yep, silver stater, fine, you get this for that much. So over the centuries, the ancient Greeks adopted this and it spread throughout. And the ancient Greeks were probably the widest producers of coins. But in about, I think maybe the 3rd century BC, Philip II of Greece, he hired some mercenaries from I think either Britain or Gaul to help him win a battle. And these mercenaries returned to Britain and to France and to Belgium with Philip II gold staters, which are a Greek coin that he used to pay them. And they said, these are great. This is really great for trade. This is treasure. This is value. This is much better than whatever we've been using. So they started trying to make their own using the metals of gold and stuff they imported. And they weren't very good at it. I mean, ancient Greece was at the pinnacle of artistic expression, and they made coins for centuries, whereas they weren't so sophisticated in ancient Britain. So that is meant to be the head of Apollo. What you actually get is a really zoomed in perspective of a laurel wreath, which looks like just a gobbledygook, but it is meant to be the leaves of a laureate wreath. On the other side, you'll see what used to be a horse and a chariot, and it's now a series of crescents jumbled in a bag.
Horse and chariot is my second guess.
Yeah. And you'll see the little cog at the bottom. That was what used to be the chariot wheel.
Right.
And there are more coins that chart the progression from Philip II stater to that more efficiently and more completely. But that's the only one I have at the moment. And so I will look to fill in those blanks going forward. But for now, not a priority.
Cool.
But that's a really cool, just around the time that Caesar came to invade,
Yep.
Iron Age British coin.
Okay.
And then just going through, we go into Roman. So this is Clausius, who was a military leader in Britain in about the late 200s AD.
Okay.
And he was found to be running a scam with pirates off the coast of Britain, where he would let them plunder his settlements. He would then give them half the proceeds, take half the proceeds, and claim they never recovered the spoils. So Rome sentenced him to death. So he said no, and he said, I'm going to declare myself emperor of Britain and distance myself. So he managed that for about 6 years before he was murdered by his treasurer, who then also declared himself emperor.
Okay.
So that was one of the first Roman coins made
Yep.
in Britain. You've already seen this Anglo-Saxon gold thrumser.
That fits in next for you. Yep.
Pardon me?
That fits next in the.
Yeah, that's next. That's the after the Romans left Britain for the most part. The Anglo-Saxons came in, Germanic tribes, and they made a few of those. And then over the next few centuries, the Vikings also came in. Still yet to get a good Viking coin. That's
Yep.
on my list. But they then introduced a gold coinage again, but only in limited numbers because in later years, a lot of gold and silver flowed over to the Middle East, to the richer centers of along the Silk Road, where gold and silver all went to pay for various luxuries.
Mm-hmm.
So there was actually very little gold coinage in Britain for about 500 years then.
Yeah.
So moving on to this one of my personal favorite coins, a testoon of Henry VIII, early shilling. and one of the most iconic Tudor portraits on a coin. They decided to make him facing on this coin and very large, which was a shame considering his deteriorated health at that point. But it's very difficult to get one in any good condition because Henry VIII debased the coins, removed the silver content or reduced it in order to pay for his wars in France and Central Europe. So very hard to get them like that.
So he took a lot of them out of circulation, basically.
Well, they still circulated, but they were made of such low quality metal that they were often found corroded, cracked. In fact, that's what got him the nickname Old Copper Nose. Because when you would wear down the silver surface of the coin, you'd see the copper showing through on his nose.
And you've got the Tudor Rose on the back, right?
Yes, that's the Tudor Rose and HR for Henry Rex or Henrik Rex. That, as I say, is a bucket list coin for me.
Yeah, lovely.
So that's one of my absolute favorite ones. Just two more to cover. This one is a quarter guinea of George I. So at that time, 1718, Isaac Newton was the mint master at the mint in London, and that coin was a testament to his skill that they were able to fit so much detail into such a small gold coin. They introduced that denomination in just that year and in 1762 because both of those periods marked a time when silver was overvalued abroad. As a result, everyone was cashing in their silver overseas, leaving them with just gold. So they had to be inventive with splitting up the gold coinage into these sorts of small denominations in order to give people small enough fractions for trade. This, I would say, is an interesting... do you want to say something?
No.
Just showing me what it is in case I forget.
I was about to say, you suddenly notice a complete difference with, like you're saying, with grades and obviously the quality of coin as it comes up. There's a noticeable difference between everything that you would look for grading wise without going into the depths of everything. It's
quality of strike.
Difference.
It's suddenly something which is easier to grade
as a precious metal, and people can suddenly look at that and say, yes, got great value to it, obviously with other valuable pieces as well. But
it's more difficult. I also would say that it's a testament to how interesting economically it was at the time that everyone was a trader, right? Because everyone was picking from the lifeblood of the economic global market through trading gold and silver. So everyone became a bit of an investor and a trader in their own way. Silver was overvalued abroad, so they all traded over there, leaving them with just gold. Mm-hmm. And I think after a while, that just became too difficult for the banks to manage, to have their everyday citizens trading from what represented pure value, pure intrinsic value.
And how cool is that? Like the detail in that, an MS-64, you said the detail they fitted into the small coin, but it still exists, and that's 300 years old. 300 years old, yeah.
That's
over 300 now.
That's an amazing one, just for how intricate it is.
You get modern coins that don't even hit that.
No, I know. And the highest grade of that, I think, is a single 66.
So your one shit.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. I bought that raw and had it graded.
Wow, okay.
So I was still happy with the 64.
It's always a nice achievement picking up a raw coin and getting a top grade.
I think I graded nearly all of these, except for this last one I'm going to show you.
Okay.
Which I bought a couple of years ago from Heritage, and this is one of my most modern coins in my collection. It's one of the only British euros they made, and this was in 2002 when they were proposing a euro coinage from Britain. So you'll see on the back.
That's why it's undated.
Yeah, you'll see on the back it says specimen at the top, differentiating it from a typical euro.
Okay.
And they only made, I think, about 10 or 15 of them.
Why?
Because they were just made for internal meetings to propose what a euro would look like in Britain. Right. I think they deliberately made it that ugly so that they wouldn't adopt it.
Okay, so you bought this coin from Heritage Auctions?
Yeah, it was after I'd left, so it was a couple of years ago now. I always wanted one. Because of the modern historical significance. I think for me, it's hard to find coins that really are unusual and stand out by my standard in this more recent, maybe last couple decades. But that one for me was a bucket lister, just because I like to show it to Europeans and say, I wish.
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty much, I guess, anecdotally, you've shown us exactly how someone can get in the market, and you're not buying an investment per se. You're buying British history. You're buying a historical artifact that turns out to be a fantastic investment at the same time.
That's definitely how I see it. I would say that a lot of dealers, a lot of coin collectors will say, don't buy it as an investment. This isn't an investment. I would challenge that and say, if your entire profession is based off making money off coins, then I think you can buy it as an investment. I think it's just about making sure you're buying prudently, the best you can afford at what is either a fair price or even below if you know how to grade.
Yeah. I think I'll probably challenge you, and Rich will probably agree. We get, from the flip side of that, we get a lot of people come to us that want to start investing in gold. They say to us, when we put together an idea of a few graded coins or some historical pieces, they will say to us, I'm not a coin collector, I'm just an investor. What would be your sort of take on something like that?
Well, you're saying when they're buying graded gold, typically. I mean, are you saying is this usually when there's a significant premium over the bullion value?
So we will get people come to us and look to just start investing. It's more to the case of I've got X amount. I've never invested before. I'm looking at the best way to start. As I say, we will point them in direction of some graded pieces because of all the benefits we've obviously previously discussed earlier today, and obviously the added benefits you get from that. But they instantly think, no matter what that is, they don't want a collectible piece that commands such a value. They just see gold price, coin you put in front of them.
I'd say if they're coming to you to do the buying, then yeah, that sounds very much like an investor. I think that as we talked about earlier, I think if someone's saying, I've got this money, I want to leave here with some gold, what's a good thing to buy? In the UK, they might end up buying sovereigns. When you buy sovereigns, you might think, oh, wow, this one's from 1890. Sure, we know that's just gold value, but they think, well, that's pretty old. And maybe think, oh, maybe I can complete the 1890s. Maybe I'll get all the 1880s as well. And suddenly you've got a collector. I would say the more distance there is between the buyer and the investor and the buyer, let's say, the more they're just essentially leaving it to someone else to buy. I think real enthusiasm starts when they get to handle the gold pieces themselves, when they get to really see this item, feel the history, just appreciate the significance of it. I think gold obviously is a much more mainstream investment, but when you start to buy limited edition pieces, when you start to buy graded, more historical pieces, sovereigns, what have you, you do introduce another layer to the potential value, that of a collector, which I think is just a way of diversifying what represents a single investment.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's got to be appreciated as quite a sophisticated investment now. It's not just you've got the gold price, but you've also got a numismatic price. And if chosen smartly, as you said, there can be a lot of value in it, and there can be a lot of investment potential in it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen people buy huge amounts of sovereigns. You know, they just buy a bunch of gold British sovereigns, and they go through and they find, let's say, some 1916 British sovereigns in there, which are a slightly rarer year. And their premium's probably about, you know, maybe at the time sovereigns were 450 or 400. These were worth 550. That's proportionally or percentage-wise a huge boost. And there's also, for something like sovereigns, which are collected in South Africa, Australia, India, Greece, Britain, all over the place. For something like those, there are minute differences that make huge differences in value. So you might be buying a big group of sovereigns and you look through and you find a 1917 London in there, which is worth, 5,000 or something. I don't think you'll find a 1920 Sydney, which is worth maybe 500,000 now. But you could find, there is a potential for an upswing you weren't expecting, which you wouldn't get if you're just buying gold bullion bars.
Yeah. I think you've probably gone, we'll just go back to the book, and I think the themes that you've got in here are really fantastic in terms of markets as a whole. There were some interesting themes in there in terms of what you explained to the reader of the actual country a coin is from. Not only impacts it because of its, I guess, worldwide nature, but the GDP of that country, the history of that country, obviously all has an impact. Do you see that developing further as the market continues or grows? Where do you see the markets going moving forward?
Well, I think touching on what I mentioned earlier about the length of a numismatic series, be it the US, Australia, whatever, they're all countries which have a lot of high net worth individuals, a relatively strong GDP, and this interest in grading, this interest in differentiating between different coins, such a short series. So that helps for commoditization. It does help for more confident buying and selling. I think that it's interesting that the UK is such a strong market. It's because we have everything that it takes. We have a lot of people interested in our history. We have pretty high GDP, and we have a lot of collectors in Britain. But we also have them in the US, people who emigrated, generations ago, who still feel that kinship with the UK. We have buyers in Japan who are interested in the art and of British coins and some of the amazing engravers we had in the past. And then we have all the different countries to which we're connected, who also see some interest and kinship in British coins. So I think that doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. British coins have such a propped up interest base, collector base, that it does contribute a lot. I have noticed over the last few months, maybe last year or so, there are fewer coins being reoffered. For a while, with the strength of the market, a lot of British coins, you'd see them come up maybe once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. Now, I think people are holding back on trading some of the better British coins. I think people are recognizing their investment potential so much that they're holding on to them, being nervous about parting with them maybe before a big spike in the market. As such, what I've seen turn up is a lot more of the real rarities of more niche markets. Like, I think Heritage recently, the height of their August ANA sale was a Romanian pattern in gold, which went for sort of $250,000 or something. And that wouldn't have been an obvious choice a few years ago, but I think people are starting to see beyond borders and just go for the top graded rarities, no matter which country it's from, because they know that's something that if someone wants the best, they'll have to come to them for. Mm-hmm. And that's the mantra you'll hear a lot in coins, and in fact in any collectible is, buy the best quality that you possibly can afford.
Yep. I think we've seen the same as well. Big money coming in from the likes of the US, not only individuals, but the likes of funds. And so they do want those top grades, and they're willing to sit on them for a long time. So they're sitting on them. And that means they're not reappearing in the market, which inevitably is driving up the demand. And like you said, we're starting to see some other variations of coins coming through.
And I think that the UK coin market, not just based in the UK, but the market for UK coins can absorb that for funds which are putting aside a lot of, let's say, Una Lions or other coins. But I think that there are some markets that are more delicate. And as long as we're, as a cautionary tale, we're not heading towards the, funds keeping back everything and then pushing it all at once, we should be fine. Mm-hmm. I think, as I say, investment contribution to these alternative markets, these collectors markets, they really do help. They build in safety nets. Say if some of the market drops, let's say if there's a big collector who was disproportionately boosting prices for a certain type, let's say they die. Everyone has got these market precedents, the prices that the pieces once went for, and the investors and other dealers will help build on a safety net, meaning the price won't drop as much as it would have. Yeah. But I think it's really a fascinating time in the coin market. I've been writing for a few years for a coin magazine here called Coin News. So I think for about the last 5 or so years, or maybe 6 years now, I've been writing a column where I reflect on that month's activity in the coin market. And it's really interesting for me looking back and seeing how different it was back in 2020, seeing what was cheap at the time or what was expensive versus where I see the market now. Mm. I mean, it's fascinating how much it's moved, and I can only watch and wait and see how it's going to go the next few years.
And in a pretty short space of time as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just a few years in the industry.
Cool. Well, I think we've touched on some really, really exciting pieces, and hopefully introduce the audience to a whole range of diversity within the coin market. Of course, your Ecoinomics book. Where
can people find this? Yeah. Where can people find this?
So that's available on Amazon. It's for sale on Spink's website. You can find it through my website, ecoinomics.co.uk. Yep. And I'm trying very hard to convince you both to stock it here as well.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, of course.
I think people can email me directly for my signed copy. That's going to go for auction for quite a little premium, but you can get in touch with me. Just to finish off, thanks so much for your time. I think we do ask everyone that comes on just one final question. Basically, I think we've got our answer with your coin already, but we'll ask you anyway. What is one collectible that you would not sell regardless of price that you've got in your collection?
1646 Newark siege shilling, made during the siege of Newark during the English Civil War. They didn't make that many. This is the top graded of the type, and what makes it very significant is that it's made from a piece of chopped up silver plate because they ran out of any actual bullion to use, and this particular plate still bears the hallmark from when it was made in 1638. Wow. There's only 4 hallmarked coins of this type in the world. I didn't know it existed, and I had to really splash out for it this year, but if I could only keep one coin in my collection, it'd be that one.
So no matter what the money is or offer is, you keep
it. Depends what you're offering.
No, all right, that's pretty cool. No, we appreciate time, some wicked insights into the market. Great, really educational for us. So the people listening must be really, really pleased with that. So everyone go out, buy the book. Make sure you give us a like on pretty much any platform that your podcasts are coming out with, and we'll see you guys with a few more questions for next week's guests.
Yeah, thank you very much, and appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, guys.
Lovely.
Amazing.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.